There are moments in your life where everything changes and you don't even realize it. And looking back, for me, it was not getting arrested or becoming homeless. And don't get me wrong, becoming homeless, I wouldn't take that back for nothing. Becoming homeless absolutely changed my life, but believe it or not, it changed my life for the better. But the moment where my life took a completely different route than I had ever thought it was going to take. It was not, none of that stuff. It was the first time I ever took a Percocet. The first time I ever took a Percocet, the trajectory of my life just completely changed. It was like another timeline, just broke off and just I went a completely different direction. What's wild about that is for the longest time I was so adamantly, vehemently, that's probably not even, I'm not even saying that right. I was vehemently, I don't know if I'm saying, I was really, really against hard drugs. I was, oh man, like I was just a stoner for the longest time. If you were doing anything other than smoking pot or drinking, you were a loser to me. I thought you were just a scumbag. And again, I grew up in the Dare era, so the depiction of people that are doing pills and heroin and meth, like it just, you think that they're just under a bridge. That's it. There's only one way that looks, and it's not true. It's very far from the truth. Addiction knows no socioeconomic boundaries. A doctor, a lawyer, a businessman, Wall Street, and then you got under the bridge, and the only thing that separates those people are their social status in life. And depending on how far one takes it, it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when you end up under the bridge or in the tent like I did. Man, it's just, for the longest time I was adamantly against anything other than weed, and I really wasn't even a drinker, but it was legal, so my perception of it was, there's nothing wrong with it, right? And the crazy thing, what I understand now is, like, I feel like the people who are addicted to alcohol, they have it worse than people like me who were addicted to heroin, because if they sold Perk 30s at the gas station, I would surely not be alive today. I might not be sober, who knows. I wish I would have known what that little blue pill was going to end up costing me. If I knew then what I know now, would I have taken that pill? I don't know the answer to that, because I do understand that everything that's happened, it had to happen in order to bring me to where I'm at today. And where I'm at today is something that I would not trade for anything. If you told me, hey, you can have all the things and be where you're at today, but you got to go through that again, I wouldn't take it back. I wouldn't. But I can honestly say that if I knew what that little blue pill was going to end up costing me, maybe I wouldn't have made the same decision. Because at the time, it wasn't a life-changing decision to me. We were just having fun. I was just hanging out. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I will never forget the way I felt once I took the pill. Carried a lot of stress on my shoulders. I carried a lot of responsibility on my shoulders. I felt responsible for my mother and my brother. It's mind-boggling how they figured out how to put all these wonderful feelings into this little tiny thing. And it's kind of hard to explain to somebody that has never experienced it, but somehow all of those feelings, all of that stress, all of the worry, the constant worry and fear of, am I going to be able to do this? It just once I took the pill, all of that melted away. Just like I said, I was hanging out, I was having fun. But once I felt what it felt like, it was not about getting high anymore. It was about the peace, that false sense of peace and release that you get when you take it. It's a no-brainer, honestly. And I remember having a conversation with my mom, so my mom was never into drugs. She was the good example that I had in my life growing up. The woman that raised me, my brother never even got to meet her. He doesn't even know the same woman that I know. And I remember having a conversation with her about, I get that worry instinct from her. She was always the glue. She was always the one holding everything together. And my whole life, until I became an adult, she was always worked. She always had a job. She always paid the bills. She always cooked and cleaned. She did it all. She was like Superwoman. And she ended up getting some kind of surgery when I was younger, and they prescribed her Vicodin. She didn't just instantly become an addict when she took the pills that they prescribed her, but it was a seed that was planted in her because, she told me about, the same thing we're talking about now. She was just up my butt, dude. Like, she was on me all the time. I couldn't get away with nothing, basically. And she was just always really worried about me. Like, I remember when I was younger, she wouldn't even let me get Happy Meals, a cheeseburger Happy Meal from McDonald's. If I was getting McDonald's, it had to be chicken nuggets because she seen something that, somebody got sick from like salmonella or something from a cheeseburger at McDonald's. So like after that point, I was never allowed to eat those. Like, she was so worried about me. It was out of love though. She was a very, very loving mother. I remember her telling me that, that constant worry she always had when she took those Vicodins that they gave her, it was gone. It disappeared. And I understand what she meant now. I feel like a lot of that worry that she always had, it transferred over to me. In the role that I played once she became an addict, it went from her being the glue to me being the glue. We talked a couple episodes ago about how when I was 19, I had custody of my brother. Him and I lived in my car for 3 months until I saved up enough money to get my first place. And, I was driving him to school every day, making sure he got to school, making sure we had food, just making sure that we survived. That's a lot of pressure for a 19-year-old kid. It wasn't until I was in my early 20s that I ended up taking a Percocet for the first time, but all of that stress, it was just like whatever I was carrying, once I took that pill, it was gone. It melted away. And that's why those things are so dangerous, because we're only human beings, all of us. And we only know what we're taught or what we learn on our own. I never developed the coping skills that were necessary to deal with these situations in a way that didn't involve using substances. It was like an accident waiting to happen. I was like an accident waiting to happen. Somehow they figured out how to stuff all these wonderful feelings into this little tiny pill. It is evil. It is insidious. And my heart goes out to anybody that is still struggling with it, because I know how hard it is to overcome. The odds are against us. A lot of us do not make it. You hear these stories about people, they do pills. Well, now he's on dope. And I would hear that and I'd be like, how could that ever happen? I will never, ever do something like that. Yeah, right. A lot of the things that I said I would never do went out the window when it came down to it. And I know a lot of us, that's how a lot of us end up on heroin. People get into car accidents or they have surgeries and, You were prescribed an opiate, and then once that opiate is no longer given to you, you turn to the streets. I held it together for a long time. I took my first Percocet when I was like 23. I didn't do heroin until I was 30 years old. That's quite a long time. You know, those pills aren't cheap. And especially, you know, by the time I started doing dope, they were over $1 a milligram. And you can only sustain that habit for so long. So I'll never forget that first time I took one. My friend Brendan moved here from New York. And ironically, he moved here to get sober from heroin. But the situation he moved into, his dad was dating this woman, and this woman had a prescription of these Perc 30s. So another recipe for disaster, right? And she would get a bunch of them every month. They'd give her like 100 or something. I don't even remember, but they would give her a bunch of these pills, and within 2 weeks of the month, she would run out because, you know, Brendan's dad was doing them, she was doing them, Brendan was doing them. So that's 3 people, you know, in one household off of a prescription. And this woman, she would get $15,000 a month in alimony. She was loaded, I'm telling you, dude. She had this mansion in Concord. It was the coolest. We used to love it. I used to love hanging out there. It was just this really nice place, and I grew up poor. So, like, you know, I didn't grow up around fancy stuff. So, of course, I'm hanging out over there. Brendan was like my best friend for the longest time. And I still have nothing but love for Brendan, man. He's such a good dude. He's always been such a good dude. Even when he was in active addiction, he'd give you the shirt off of his back. You know, if he had one pill left and I needed half of it, he'd give it to me. He's always been just an amazing person, amazing friend, and I haven't spoke to him in a few years, and I doubt he'll ever see these videos. But Brendan, if you ever see these videos, dude, I love you. And I appreciate you, and I appreciate all the stuff that we went through, and I don't blame you at all for giving me my first Percocet. I basically made you give it to me. I get it. I'm not mad at you at all, but, you know, so this lady would send us down to Youngstown like a couple times a month with like a couple grand. And we'd drive down there in her Lincoln, and we'd go pick up a big bag of these Percocets, and I would just go just to hang out. Eventually, curiosity killed the cat, and I'm like, what is the big deal about these things? You know, let me get one. And Brendan said, I don't know, bro. Once you have the knowledge, you can't unknow it. And, you know, I've talked about this before, but it's crazy. You know how many things people say to you on a daily basis, let alone over years, and you just, it goes in one ear and out the other. But that one sentence, once you have the knowledge, you can't unknow it. Man, dude, that was just, I don't even think Brendan knew how deep that was when he said it, but and how true it was, because he's right. Once you have the knowledge, once you know what that feeling feels like, you cannot ever forget. I'll never forget. And of course, my ego being bigger than a building. Man, ain't nothing. I remember my exact words. There's nothing the size of my pinky nail that will ever stop me from doing anything or make me do anything. And he's like, Joey, I'm telling you, dude, you don't know what you're getting yourself into. And I'm like, man, I don't want to hear it. Let me get one. And finally, I got one from him. I remember thinking, there is no pill or substance on this planet that is stronger than me. I remember really believing that. And gosh, was I wrong. I was so wrong. Before I knew it, I'm 33 years old, living in a freaking tent. You know, it took some years for me to get there, but nevertheless, I got there. And I just remember feeling like so much relief. It was like, I used to get panic attacks for no reason, seemingly for no reason. I have a better understanding now of why I may have been getting them, but I was just a mess, dude. I was a mess. And, I'd be hanging out, nothing would be going on, and all of a sudden it felt like a giant boulder fell out of the sky and just crushed my chest. Or, another way it used to happen to me, and this is going to be weird, and I don't fully understand why this was how it happened, but like the only way I could describe the feeling I was having, it was like if I closed my eyes, I could see both of my arms being chopped off and me just bleeding to death. And I would be panic. I would have these panic attacks. I wouldn't be able to breathe. And the only thing that would calm me down is I would have to call my mother, and she would have to tell me exactly where everybody was. Your brother's here, he's fine. Your dogs are at the house, they're fine. Your girlfriend's fine, and that'd be the only thing that would calm me down. But I was just carrying around so much weight and responsibility that really it shouldn't have been my responsibility. That when I took that Percocet, none of that existed. It was gone. It was gone. I felt like Superman. And it's simple math. I mean, of course you're going to get addicted to something like that. Left to my own devices, this is where I ended up. I don't got no God in my life. I have no clue who Jesus is. I was left to my own devices. The dangerous part about this was not that it made me feel amazing. The dangerous part was it made me believe that I'd finally found the answer. It made me believe that I finally found the cure. Drugs, Percocets weren't my problem. They were my solution to the problems that I had, right? Think about that. That's so twisted. Percocet was not my problem. It was the solution to the problems that I actually had. Goodness gracious. Percocet was not my problem. It was the solution. Think about that. I can't even oh my goodness, dude. I thought I finally figured it out. I thought I finally found the answer. The medicine. I thought I finally found the medicine to cure whatever. And it was just, again, it was not a matter of if, it was a matter of when I ended up homeless and in a tent or dead. I am so lucky that I did not die. A lot of the people that I grew up with are no longer with us. And they didn't do anything different than I did. Of course, I wonder why sometimes. Why? Why me? Why did I survive and so many people that I know did not? And I think, as a matter of fact, I know this is why. This is why I survived. It's because I'm supposed to be doing this. And I thank God every single day that I've been given the opportunity to do this. And who knows where this is going to go. I am nothing and nobody. I don't even know what I'm doing here. I barely know how to work a computer. I'm doing this all by myself. These videos, listen, I think I started on TikTok last year. I committed to posting every day, at least once a day, between 1 and 3, sometimes 4 or 5 times a day. I have not missed a day since I started. I think I started doing my YouTube episodes like 8 months ago. I committed to posting every week a full episode and, whatever on the shorts, maybe at least once a day on the shorts, whatever. I have not missed a day or a week since I started. And I don't get very many views, but Look, if these videos can help one person understand that it is possible to survive this, thank you, God. Thank you. It ain't me. None of this is me. The only reason why this is possible is because God gave me this gift. God gave me my life back. And again, I am nothing and no one. So therefore, I know if God is willing to do this for me, He is waiting to do it for you. No matter what you've done, no matter where you're at, God can give you your life back. You just need to surrender. It talks about in the big book, a lack of power. That was our dilemma. If we could do this on our own, AA wouldn't exist. We wouldn't need recovery programs in residential treatment facilities, in jail. If we could do this on our own, listen, you don't have to do it on your own. There are people that want to help you and they do not want anything from you. I'm one of those people. Please reach out to me. I would do anything I can to help. If you're watching this and you've never struggled with addiction, I really need you to understand something, okay? Nobody wakes up wanting to become an addict. Nobody ever sets out to become addicted to drugs. Most of us are trying to escape something. And a lot of the times we end up using the only methods that we know how. You know, we are all just human beings trying to feel okay. All of us, addict or not. All of us. That's one thing we all have in common. Every single person on this planet. We are all human beings trying to feel okay. And left to our own devices, some of us end up in a tent or under a bridge or dead. But it don't gotta be that way. The first pill I took, it did not ruin my life overnight. But it did start a chain of decisions that almost did. And before long, I was not taking Percocet because I wanted to get high. I was taking it because I did not know how to live without it. You know, and it's so, it's just a crazy thing. It's a crazy thing, you know, because I was hanging out with my friend Brendan. He moved here, and you know, the dangerous part about this is, you know, it wasn't, they are no, and